Please welcome the panel on The Rise of Asian American Entrepreneurs, moderated by Chair of Senior Fellows and Senior Advisor for Global Markets at the Milken Institute, Curtis S. Chen.
Hey, good morning. Aloha, and hello to everyone. Hey, thanks for joining us. I want to say thanks also to the Milken Institute for adding to a program that today, on this day, includes Bill Clinton, Usher, but clearly this is the panel to watch, and a shout out to everyone watching online, even those like, I don't know, awake in Manila. But hey, so, you know, there's so much at this conference, of course, about investment, about big business, leaders of countries. But those who know America know that America is also powered by small businesses, by entrepreneurs who then one day become those great companies that you hear about. So we have a diversity of panelists on stage, but then some are saying, oh, it's not diverse enough. And they have a point. So on this, you know, Asia Pacific American Heritage Month, a shout out to you all celebrating. Some say, well, no, it's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And that just reflects the diversity of the Asian American population. So I have a quiz. Biggest Asian American group actually now is India. Indian Americans, and then Chinese Americans, and there's always some back and forth. But what do people think is the third largest Asian American group?
It's Filipino.
Those who couldn't hear it, it is Filipino Americans. And those of you all who know, I lived in Manila for 4 years, and shout out to Filipino Americans. Last night, there was a session with Will.i.am. Watch him online, some great AI content. And he was asked, what's your favorite city in Asia? And he's like, I'm going to get in trouble, right? But it was Manila because of that Filipino-American diaspora and that connection too. Hey, so really we're just gonna begin, and I wanna begin by going to my buddy on my left. Bing, you are, it's so many things. It's like you're the creator of creators in the online world. But when you look at the Asian American community, entrepreneurs in particular, can you give me a kind of a state of what is happening, you know, the good, but, you know, the challenges also, but the big picture of what's new, what's recent?
So first of all, it's such a privilege to be here. Thank you again to the Milken family and Curtis. And so good to be here with all friends too. I think succinctly, being any form of Asian or any form of minority is a constant tug between holding something you hate and holding something you love, both affliction and affirmation at once. When you look at sort of the creative or the cultural industries, our diaspora is the only minority to make significant leaps in on-screen representation in the last 15 years. It's actually quintupled. Despite that, however, we know the majority is still secondary. We also know that greenlighting power is still waning, so pros and cons. Within the economy, specifically within venture businesses, our community is the most successful slate of minority founders. 43% of the IPO'd companies on this continent, or in both the exchanges rather, in the last 2 years, have at least one Asia-Pacific co-founder. Despite this, though, in large corporations, we're still the least likely demographic to be promoted to management. We still experience the widest income disparity, so forth and so on. And then finally, for all the great accolades that the Payals of the world achieve, I think our parents still don't understand what we do. So there's pros and cons to everything.
But can we go to slide, I think it's 2.
Not to pick on Payal. By the way, Usher may sing, but Payal can dance. So.
Hey, slide 2. Bing, tell us what's going on the screen, because your parents will be like, wow. That's Bing. So what do we see?
My mom thought, you've IPO'd. You can finally look at my house. That's not what happened. No, we were really privileged because of the NASDAQ chief digital officer, who's a Gold House co-founder, Seher Tadani, to be able to ring the closing bell of NASDAQ on Tuesday to usher in APOM. And it was really just meaningful because there are 200 sort of CEOs, funders, founders, identifying sort of mutual support opportunities for the first time. My favorite part about this is most of these faces were new. This very spoilingly is the 4th time we've done this in the last 18 months. But most of these faces were new, and all of them represent so many different industries. You have the chief business officer of the biggest independent music label in the world. You have the founders of several of the biggest unicorn businesses. You have the right hand of Ron Conway at SV Angel, so forth and so on. And so, we were just really lucky to be able to share a platform to spotlight so many of these great leaders, and then also hopefully create great imagery for one of them to actually ring at an IPO one day.
Absolutely. I mean, how cool is that? Let's give a hand. And I think I don't know who was there. Dave was there.
Dave was there.
I think I was stuck here prepping for this. But there's such a diversity of Asian American entrepreneurs, each actually with their own journey. Right, some are actually immigrants, some are sons or daughters of immigrants, but really a diversity of experiences. And I said a shout out to Erica Choi, wherever she is, a colleague at the Milken Institute. Yeah. That helped put this together. And I said, I don't want just a panel of like Chinese Americans. And so, here we have, of course, Chinese Americans, but East Asians, South Asians, and of course my shout out to my Southeast Asian friends out there. But I wanted to go all the way to the end. And Shiza, for those of you who don't know, you need to go online, check out our place. Shiza, of course, some people know early on in her career, working with Malala, doing some amazing things. And in our pre-call, we talked about, Shiza, you're originally from Pakistan, but you brought that cultural understanding to launch kind of in a way a new career, as an entrepreneur. If you could share a little bit about your journey and how that kind of influenced your thinking and the success that you're achieving. And tell people a little bit about our place too, for those who don't know.
I'd love to. There is such a vibrant energy in this room, and I'm so grateful for my fellow panelists, but the community that's here, and I think it really shows Asian Americans, allies showing up for representation. I'm an immigrant. I grew up in Pakistan. And when I moved to America, I literally found my place in America by cooking food and having people come to my dinner table. And it was through that process of finding place in this country that I looked around at the kitchenware industry and really felt a lack of a brand where I saw my home cooking traditions, my Ammi's foods represented, and came upon this passion of building our place, which is a direct-to-consumer kitchenware brand that is all about building place through the lens of food and home cooking. Before this, I co-founded and ran a nonprofit called the Malala Fund with Malala Yousafzai, the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner. And I think the things that have connected that have been my experience of being an outsider, of being a female entrepreneur and Asian entrepreneur, and turning that into a superpower, because when we look around and we don't see products, brands, stories, communities that are built for us, as all my fellow panelists and friends have done, we go out and build it. And it's very often an idea that doesn't seem obvious. We were rejected over 100 times when raising early funding, and yet that allows us to then build with so much more discipline. And today, our place has really, become one of the fastest growing brands in the country, with retail stores, wholesale, direct-to-consumer, cookware, appliances. And I think a lot of that journey has been through the lens of building what I didn't see existed for myself.
One thing I was struck, and can we go to slide? I think it's 3. And so we have 2 slides that really kind of, and then let's see slide 4. And these slides, when I went to the website, showed kind of the product line. And when I read through the descriptions, it talked about how there were products developed, let's say, for Eid, for Shabbat. So in a way, we were beginning to see Asian Americans also are an important consumer base. And so how do we target them? But then how also do we go beyond just targeting Asian Americans? And to be honest, Asian Americans aren't the only ones. And sometimes one of the things that we had talked about, what is that issue of appropriation versus appreciation? If you had a few thoughts on that, if you thought through that whole, how you began your business or others doing the same thing, is there we're the authentic ones? But how did you think through that as you built what is such a great business?
Yeah, we're obsessed with it, right? Because when you haven't seen your culture represented, and when you have seen it represented, when you've seen it sort of taken without acknowledgement, then you become obsessed with really wanting to do right when you talk about culture, and it's very hard, right? Which is why most brands don't do it. Because you're more likely to cross that line of appropriation. The way that we think about it is, how are you investing in the community? So when we made our collection for Nowruz, the calligrapher was Persian, and the product designer was Persian, and my co-founder is Persian, and the copywriter was Persian, and we really sort of took the time to partner and collaborate and invest in the community, because that's the only way you really get at it, right? It's the only way you know that inside joke that your grandmother used to make. Otherwise, you are so far removed from really getting to that place that makes you, that transports you back home. And so at our place, we have this line of products we call tradition wear. We make products that celebrate culture, everything from Nowruz to Shabbat to Ramzan to Eid to Noche Buena to Lunar New Year. We partner with the community. We give back to the community. It's very hard to do, right? Because it's one community at a time, one product at a time. But what we're saying is, you are worth investing in, you are worth showing up for. I don't need to paint all of this with a single brush stroke. I can take the time to just understand what your dinner table looked like at your home and make you feel seen, and do that one at a time and really build a community that falls in love with you.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. I can see why you were named one of Time 30 under 30, Forbes 30 under 30.
Long time ago. No, haven't been under 30 for a while. But.
No, we're all 40 under 40. No. Hey, I want to turn to Dave in the middle. So Dave Liu, well, you'll talk a little bit about really with the Hyphen Capital, a fund that you created to invest in Asian American entrepreneurs. And it's so striking that, I lead a lot of the creative economy work in Asia. And in Asia, sometimes people say to me, oh, I don't want to talk about my failures. Can't I just talk about the good stuff when I'm on stage with you? And some of that is carried over here to Asian America. But there's also an ethos, particularly in Silicon Valley. Oh yeah, I failed, but look at me now. Dave, talk to us a little bit about your fund and what you're investing in, and that whole issue of when you invest, failure I think is okay. And what are you seeing in some of the organizations, companies that you're already investing in?
Yeah, so thank you, Curtis, for having me. You can hear me? Okay. So I've been in Silicon Valley for almost 27 years now. I've seen a lot. I was there with Jerry Yang when Yahoo started, and I was fortunate enough to have an Asian American inspiration and leader work for someone like that. But I've also seen the downside of working in corporate, in whether it be banking or consulting or tech. The numbers are very clear. I was fortunate at Yahoo that we had many Asian American executives, but the numbers are 43% of the workforce in tech in Silicon Valley are Asian, but only 20% are executives. So it was very strong disparity. And I saw data shared when I was with Tony Xu at this event, and it was very striking that the two companies that had parity for Asian American executives were NVIDIA and Pinterest, both with Asian American founders. And so when you look at all the other companies, I thought, well, if this ceiling exists for all the Asian American professionals there, why don't we build our own houses? So Bing has also been a strong proponent of this. So this is why I wanted to invest in Asian American founders, because I want to see more people like Jerry Yang, who inspired me, lead others and give people the chance to actually get promoted for their work. And a lot of it is because I think all of us who came here as either immigrants or children of immigrants, we grew up with a scarcity mindset of thinking about, how do I not lose everything I have? Our parents sacrificed everything for us. You're afraid to do anything wrong. You're afraid to fail because there's shame and you're going to fail. You're going to disappoint your parents. But I think what I've seen now is this new generation is taking that chance on themselves, taking the risk on themselves, but they need others to believe in them. So I think that first check for the founders here, the people who believe in you, that first check is such a big difference maker, because you don't know, you don't have a trust fund, you don't have someone that's going to back you up. You're literally risking it all, and your parents might not even want people to know that you quit your job. They're ashamed of you. They tell people you still work at Google or you still work at Goldman, but you're doing your thing. And so it's very interesting to see how that's changed over time. And now it's, instead of working at McKinsey or Goldman, it's okay to be a founder because they've seen examples of people before them. You see Jensen Huang on TV every day, and he's worth $70 billion or $80 billion today, I don't know. But parents are okay when they see that, but we need more examples of that to think that it's okay to stop being a doctor or stop being a lawyer. I see so many people starting their second careers after they've gotten their law degree or become a lawyer or become a doctor, and then they go start a company. But now it's like, oh, you could, not everyone can quit college and drop out to go start it, but some are doing that now, and it's okay because they see a path to success and they see examples before them. So my goal in investing in Asian American founders is to create more so that my boys can see more examples of that so they're not afraid when they grow up.
That's right. Hey, can we call up slide 5? I think this is the landing page of the Hyphen Capital website, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like faces. Are these people you invested in, or this is part of the leadership team, or?
Oh no. So this goes back to I started an Asian American Founders Circle and a community because we were notoriously bad for not networking very well in our community, and so I started a group in 2011, and these are just some friends that are in that group. The founders of YouTube and DoorDash and places that honestly even some Asian Americans don't know that were founded by Asians. So it's kind of shocking to me because the narrative out there, even if you look at the media, they don't necessarily tell our stories, and so we're trying to tell our own stories, and that's what inspires the next generation.
And I think that's kind of an important point of this panel, particularly for those, of course, in this room, but watching online, the importance of storytelling. Are we, in some days it's, they're the model minority and all the good and bad that stereotype comes. But sometimes we're almost the invisible minority in some ways, but then you can clearly tell we're Asian in other ways. Just a shout out, I see like Lisa Ling over there, or others in this room, who really have been a force for also storytelling and representation. And being last year, Gold House is so amazing. Work with us to put together a storytelling panel with everyone from Padma Lakshmi to Janet Yang, the head of the Motion Picture Academy, to Daniel Dae Kim, and of course my buddy Eric Nam. And what was striking on that panel was all of them, I think, are so successful, but they each said, but I can't raise money for anything other than what they think. So Padma Lakshmi was, everyone wants to fund my next cooking show, but I have a vision of doing so much more. Dave, is there like stereotypes that you're facing? We talked about earlier when we were outside, there's so many great startups because of STEM, and indeed there are a lot of Asian Americans who are kind of good at STEM, but there's such a diversity of people, but then people only see NVIDIA. They see Jerry at Yahoo. What are you seeing when you invest above and beyond STEM? AI is so hot at this conference, but it's just in general. Where are you looking at when you see investors, or when you see where you might want to invest for Asian Americans? Is it just AI?
No, not just AI. It varies. There's sports startups, there's women's health startups, there's all sorts of areas that people are interested in. This is the problem, I think, the model minority myth and everything that's put on us as we're good worker bees, we're good at math and science, we're good doctors, we're good lawyers. You see it on TV shows. We grew up with all of this. You see kind of this is what we're supposed to be, but I think we've been pigeonholed into that. Lisa's here, I produced the Jeremy Lin documentary on 30th Garden HBO. Basketball players is not something that we're supposed to be, NBA players. And so I think breaking out of that mold and that assumption that these are the only things we're good at is a problem. But I think we're trying to break out of that ourselves, and raising money is hard because when everyone sees you as good worker bees, good associates, good analysts, you don't get promoted because they want to keep you in these positions where you're continuing to help them build their business. But I think there's some of it's on us too, the hopes and dreams that we've had that our parents have placed on us. We feel that sacrifice, we owe them for that, to repay them. But sitting here next to Payal and seeing, she built ClassPass and it was a huge business, and that's not, something that most of us would consider doing, but we take that risk. We're starting to bet on ourselves more because we've seen us in those venues and we can do well in those venues, but we're like, why are we doing it for other people? Let's do it for ourselves.
Absolutely, and I think the goal of this session, and again a shout out to Milken Institute, is to bring attention to individuals or companies that you should invest in, but also that you might not know as much about as we would like you to. Clearly, one company that many of you all know about, and I'm going to Payal next, as her book is in the bookstore. Payal, tell us about your journey. And when I Googled, all about you and your company, some were like, oh, she found it was valued at 150 million. No, it was 400 million. No, it was an early unicorn. Oh, then pandemic happened. Tell us about your business and your journey. And in our pre-call, we talked also about the influence of having parents that might have immigrated here. And what does that mean? Is that a strength? Is it a challenge? If you could share some of your journey too, that'd be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, really enjoy talking about this because I have obviously told the journey of ClassPass many times, but to be able to anchor it in the Asian American journey that I had, I think is really important. And to start with that, I would say like my parents immigrated here in the 70s, and yes, they were the biggest risk takers, and I think we sometimes forget that that's actually a part of the blood that many of us have to leave a country, right? My parents also had a love marriage, which was not okay at the time, so they are very much rebels. They came here and they gave up a lot and they risked a lot. And so, of course, they went into a very much a conservative mindset. I had to go to a good school. I had to, be valedictorian, all these things. And that was just a part of my life growing up. And when I got to the point where I did want to go out on my own, I had to go and talk to them. Quitting was not easy, right? Quitting my job. I was at Bain, of course, because I was following the path and did all the things that they would make sure I was happy about. And, it's interesting. I feel like I stacked my cards in the beginning of my life to make sure that I had all the right names on my resume. And after that, I realized I had this burning passion in my life that my parents gave me, which was this passion for Indian dance. And very similar to what, everyone has been talking about here, I found a passion in that where I realized that there was so much strength in my culture and so much strength and beauty in where I had come from. And so I really lived my life feeling like I had to share this beauty of who I was and everything that my parents had done and sacrificed in their life with other people. And whenever people always ask me, like, how did I do this being a woman of color, being a South Asian American woman, I always think back to it. And I did it because I am her. I did it because I got to be surrounded by incredible women who literally have fought so many journeys, right? I mean, we talk about the Asian American identity. I mean, yes, I was bullied through school. I was totally the person who was, never ever looked at as part of the gang. But I was like, there is beauty in that. And there is something really incredible. And that's why, like, I think when I became an entrepreneur, my parents were like, I'm going to bet on you. You've done this. You've checked every box for us. And now I'm like 23 years old, and they were like, you're ready to do this and go out on your own. And I feel really lucky that my parents gave me that power to do it, because I agree. I don't think that's something that is always given. And I think as I am raising my own kids, I think about that too, of how much pressure I am putting on them versus just letting them go out on their own. And I think about that. And I as the journey of ClassPass unfolded, I was very lucky to have my community support me. My first few rounds, I raised almost from entirely like South Asian angel investors. And I could have gone out to other people, but it's really amazing that I had so many people who just sort of through my networks and who had known me from my backgrounds in Bain and then from dance that were willing to bet on me. And I think about that journey, and I think it's so important that we do support one another, the people who have had success to be able to give back. And I mean, Bing, you've done such a great job in that whole entire process. But I'm thankful for the entire journey. ClassPass was sold about 2 years ago to MindBody. And yes, we were called a unicorn at the top of the pandemic. So it's been an amazing journey. I think the thing that I'm most proud about is that we have given people hours of their lives to work out and to have this time where they get to connect with their bodies and not sit on the couch and waste their time.
Let's go to show us slide 6 for those of you who don't know ClassPass. Really, I mean, it's amazing the business and that you're able to sell. But I was actually in the bookstore reading the beginning of your book, and it talked about also a decision you made. Was it kind of a tough? Do I sell? Do I not sell? And then what comes next? I was struck by I don't maybe it was a relative or someone said, "What do you think?" Because you've already peaked. What comes? I was so struck by that line in your book.
They said, "How does it feel that you'll never do anything as big in your life as ClassPass?" It was
Is that an Asian parent?
It was someone from MIT. It was just like an MIT friend that I had, and I was on a trip, and it really struck me. And I think this was like 8 years ago, right? And it's interesting because what it has made me do is think about, what does big mean? Right? What does that mean? And I agree, we have been coached through our entire life to say, like, accomplishment means, money or some, article or something, that's big. And and I am so thankful to be at this point in my life where I can say I don't crave any of that. What I crave is like mission and purpose. And that's how I started my journey and how I got here. And it's nice to have gone through the whole journey and to be able to go back to that point and to say like what matters is like, for me, it's like time with my kids. I create beautiful dance shows, which being alluded to, but I have a beautiful dance company, and to create art, right? And to create even, I'm building another tech company to build things that are impactful to people and to really care about that. But it's not necessarily potentially about the things that I think I had been taught my whole life were achievement and accomplishment. And so I think it's just different. It's just the word big has been changed in my mind, and I'm very happy.
Well, for those of you who've come to Milken Institute conferences before, or this is your first one, our little kind of tagline is more than a tagline. It's about building meaningful lives. And I think each of us will shape what that means. It's always funny because I end up quoting a BTS singer, Kim Dae-hyung V, and what he always says is, don't be trapped in someone else's dream.
Absolutely.
What are your dreams? And your book went into a lot of that, and saying, you have your path, but all of the people on this stage and listening and watching will find their own journeys. And the American side of me will be like, and there might be bumps and failures along the way, and don't hide them. Build on them. So do buy her book in our bookshop over there. Smita, where is Smita? Smita, I just met, and I said to her, how do I pronounce the name of your amazing tea brand? And she says, well, it's like the Himalayas. The Alayas. I thought, is it like the Ayalas from the Philippines? No, it's the Alayas. And we have this Himalayan connection. If you could tell us about your journey, and let's go to the slide. What is it? It is number 7. This is an image of your tea brand. It's almost, I want to say, a kinder, gentler tea, but tell us about your journey and the product and how you're selling it too.
Happy to. And of course, if you own a product company, you have to slang product everywhere. So I brought it back. So Alaya Tea is an organic loose-leaf tea company. We're based here in Los Angeles, and we work directly with organic, regenerative organic, biodynamic tea estates and farms all at the base of the Himalayas. Our packaging is fully compostable, and my co-founder and I, Esha, both came to start Alaya 5 years ago. A little bit of a non-traditional career path to get here. We self-funded the business after working for 15 years in the social impact and climate change spaces. So my co-founder, Esha, she's a journalist. She's been writing about climate issues for the last 15 years. She just wrote a book, actually, this year. And I worked in policy, politics, in the Obama White House, and then most recently, for the last 6 years, was over at Google, at the experimental labs of Google, Google X. And we both saw a lot of businesses and friends that were taking on a lot of money for products that maybe didn't need it. And for us, we really wanted to build a business that was thinking about slowing down a little bit more of a sustainable business, thinking a little bit more about long term. And we didn't feel like we needed to raise money when we launched 5 years ago. So we launched the product in 2019. And for us, we're both Indian Americans, so tea is like kind of in our blood, in addition to being like a little bit more risky as immigrant kids. And we also came at it from looking at, the more that we learned about the tea industry, the fact that there's so much historical pesticide use in soil, that the majority of teas have microplastics in them, and crazy amount of plastics unnecessarily on boxes and tea bags, that women are really the backbone of the agriculture industry in India, but we didn't see any owners of tea estates or owners of tea businesses that were women. We wanted to connect those dots. So we started Alaya with really thinking about how do we get more Americans excited about tea time that was so ubiquitous in India, but approach it from a more eco-friendly way. And that's really been our North Star.
And when I looked also online, it talked about you're actually even also expanding. So it's not just the tea, it's, I don't know, what kind of cup does my tea go in?
Correct, yeah.
Tell me about, as you think about expansion, we're not quite like a Starbucks tea world yet, but maybe we'll get there.
Yeah.
But tell me, as you think about the business and where it goes, it's not just selling to Asian Americans. Can this be a nation of just tea drinkers? And what are you thinking about as you're thinking about other product categories or services as you build your business?
We're getting there. You see Americans love their coffee, and we've had these different waves of the coffee movement, second wave, third wave, fourth wave, now coffee. And we're seeing that, we're Indian Americans that source Indian tea, but the majority of our customers are actually not Asian Americans. So that was a surprise for us as we've been building this company over the last 5 years. We started off with 6 SKUs of tea, and I've grown that now to almost, I think now we have 12 SKUs of tea. But along the path over the last few years, we've added different products, all from India, that have this same focus of social impact and climate. So we launched a ceramics collection. We worked with a permaculture farm in Karnataka in South India that's trained over 100 local artisans, created jobs for them, planted something like 10,000 trees on their permaculture farm. So we have a new ceramics collection as of last year. We have a tote bag that we launched with the largest certified regenerative organic cotton farm in India. And we're adding those things on as we grow because we are seeing, the excitement around tea, and we want to make sure that every product we bring on really has that focus where we're looking at, not just slowing down and having a high quality cup of tea beyond chai, which is really popular in American lexicon, but there's so many other different types of tea in India that we're trying to highlight. Darjeeling teas up in the northeast, Assam black teas at the border of India and China, and herbal teas from the valleys below the Himalayas. So yeah, we keep adding on these products because we're seeing excitement around it, and we are looking forward to doing more of that kind of stuff now.
Hey, and then how do I order your tea?
You can go online. Great question. I did not pay him to do that. AlayaTea.co. And we also are expanding our wholesale business. So we're in, something like 100 plus stores across the United States, a bunch of grocery stores, small type of shops. And we're navigating this space, as a self-funded business. We're really proud to say that we're a profitable business now after 2 years. And I think that's something that was really important for us is we're not saying that we'll never take outside money, because I think that there may be a point where it would be a really smart decision to, but for now we're sort of growing slowly and feeling really good about it. I think one of the interesting things that, Payal, you said about your parents really resonated, because my parents also were immigrants. My dad is Pakistani, my mom is Indian. They moved to Akron, Ohio, out of all places, where me and my sister were born. But I think some of this stuff is a little cyclical because my grandfather was a really quite conservative Pakistani farmer and told, my dad and his 2 brothers, like, all right, one's going to be a doctor, one's going to be an engineer, and one's going to stay here and be on the farms with me. So my dad became the engineer, and I think for me and my sister, who both took a little bit more non-traditional career paths, both my parents really encouraged it from the beginning, which I'm so grateful for. I think they saw, their parents being a little bit more strict and conservative and had their best interest in mind, obviously, but thought that was the best way of doing it. And they now, to us, were quite the opposite. My sister works in entertainment, and she's a talent manager, and I worked in politics, and then 15 years into my career started this tea business. So my husband and I just had a baby this year. He's an Indian filmmaker, had a similar upbringing, and we joke that we're going to tell our daughter that she can only be a doctor. It's like going back. So we'll see how that goes.
I think in this age, she could also be an engineer.
That would be okay. That would be okay,
but nothing else. Hey, this is now the more fun part. I wanted everyone to share a little bit of their story. Those of you in this room, feel free. We put up a QR code. You can scan. You can send in a question, because this is the more fun part, where actually I might even ask all of you if you had a question for one of the other panelists. Although some of you all know each other. What might it be? But I'm going to begin and build on that whole kind of not the stereotype of what you think we Asian Americans do, right? Whether you're now a singer or a filmmaker. And I think someone in the forefront of pushing for representation on film, in music, in a diversity of fields is you, Bing, and Goldhouse. And earlier we talked about, well, what about the creative industry, the creative sector? What are you seeing in that space as you think about Asian American entrepreneurs? I mean, the reality is, I'm on the board of a group called the Asian American Federation out in New York, and they're at the community level. And so when you look at the census data that looks at businesses, there's a whole classification of businesses where they don't hire employees. So what does that mean? It means they're family businesses. So these are mom and pop shops. They don't have 10 people, 100 people. But that's how some entrepreneurs begin. And with that little bit of a seed money, they have an idea. I don't need to work in my dad's restaurant or my mom's shop anymore. We're going to do other things. I want to be a filmmaker. I saw Bao and others in this room who have done amazing things in the documentary space, in the film space, in the music space. Bing, what are your thoughts on that part? Because we think about entrepreneurs, we don't always think about the creative industry when we think about Asian Americans.
I think, first of all, I have to say it's really depressing hearing what Smita says about the doctor line, because she's selling her and her husband very short. They're both profoundly successful. So if your kid can't be that, I'm very depressed for my own kids. No, I think maybe I'll start from a place of principle. So one is no entity, no person can serve everyone and everything. Goldhouse has never said that we are here to represent any form of the Asian Pacific diaspora. Anyone candidly who says they are is lying to you. Representing 5 billion people is impossible in all the ways that they deserve. So let me start from that. The second thing that I think about is, even though Goldhouse is an ecosystem that has multiple funds and agencies and consultancies and so forth, and we're anchoring the Asia Pacific diaspora, we are more about anchoring in our community than just serving our community. We're actually, and it's in our mission, we are here to power the entire world and make sure that everyone is supported. We just started with the Asian diaspora because I have the benefit of one form of experience of knowing that everything large starts niche, and smart people will always start with the biggest niches. Exhibit A, the most lucrative creative franchise in history, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was sold for parts in the late 80s and early 90s as a comic book failed shop. People forget that Stan Lee died poor. People forget, by the way, his chief of staff is Asian, shout out to you. People forget that Stan died poor. And you see, because all they see is Robert Downey Jr. You look at the YouTube creator economy, which I had a hand in helping to build, also founded by an Asian, Steve Chen, who's also an LP, aka my boss still. But most people don't know that the multi-billion-dollar creative economy started on the backs of Asian, LGBTQ, and Black creators because they couldn't find prominence in traditional media, period. They were all, ironically, dominating the 12 top categories in YouTube, and then fast forward is about 60% of the business pre-subscription. So we have the benefit of knowing that we have to start with the biggest population. So in terms of where does creative go, creative has sort of a dual priority of both dismantling sort of stereotypes, but then also just creating net new opportunities. We know that on the dismantling of stereotypes, there has been basically negligible improvement on the 4 biggest pernicious stereotypes against our community, among them model minority myth, perpetual foreigner, yellow peril, and objectification, specifically against Asian women in the case of sexualization. And then Asian men are still the least liked demographic on every dating app, even though, by the way, the entire C-suite of the biggest one matches all Asian. But Bernard, Hassam, and Faye are fixing that. So that's that. The place where Goldhouse is equally interested in, so we don't just sort of spank media companies privately with all of our research and all that, and that's important, fine, well. We care more about ownership, efficiency, and distribution. So the biggest sea change that needs to happen is we need more diverse greenlighters, and I do believe that it is a diverse greenlighter's responsibility to greenlight more things that are othered. One of the recent examples is we just invested, he hasn't announced it yet, but a very prolific multi-billion-dollar producer has created basically a new AI generation tool that should sort of I'm trying to use my language very carefully here, accelerate the action in sort of special effects spaces. They crassly call it the Pixar for AI. We also just invested in an anime roll-up because all the elders who own those IP are dying, and in those cases bequeathing it mostly to their grandchildren, the third and sort of the fourth generation. We think there's an immense opportunity to exploit in really productive, inclusive ways this publishing IP into series, products, and so forth. So ownership is number one. Of course, with ownership means we also need to nurture our our existing executives. So the great news is we have so many Asian greenlighters. You have Bella Bajaria and Albert Chang, the highest ranking Asians in Hollywood. You have Abhijay Prakash, the president of Blumhouse. So we are doing really well there. The second is efficiency. AI is absolutely creating a sea change, and I know you jokingly said this to Dave. I'd say half of our Goldhouse Ventures portfolio is AI now, by the way. Seriously. Yeah. There's just an immense opportunity to accelerate certain efficiencies in the creative process, specifically on the production and the post-production side, where budgets often balloon. This is why we invest in that sort of Pixar for AI. And then the final piece is sort of distribution and sharing. If we are building a world for and by our diaspora, we are wrong. That is not how we got here. That is Pangea-like, and it is candidly, it's just cardinally selfish. We didn't get here just because of us. We will not get there just because of us. And so we make sure, endemic to all of our efforts, that we're bringing in as many communities as possible. Just to punctuate this, we don't invest in Asians because I care about seeing heroes. My heroes when I was a child were Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, and Gandhi. 2/3 of them, by the way, were Asian. So I don't have that problem. We invest in us because we know we are the most successful founders per capita, period. And when you have the companies that can go all the way, become unicorns, IPO, you have the ability and liquidity to employ the most people. And so our job is to make sure we're not just investing in them, but also to ensure that they're inclusively hiring. Said very crassly, I think it's on our diaspora to ensure that 51% of our C-suites and boards are women, because the traditional system has indicated they are too slow to catch up. I think it's on us to hire Latino and Black communities, so forth and so on, because we have that power. And so on that distribution piece, we need to make sure that we're including as many communities as possible. Final thing I'll say is, in the same way that Payal has sort of recontemplated or recalibrated big, I contemplate mainstream often, especially because we came from YouTube, where, I mean, I'm now a filthy traditional media person half the time, but it's odd to me that everyone under the age of 18 only watches YouTube, and everyone over the age of 30 will only ever talk about what's in theaters. It's still very odd to me. And I think the reason I invoke this is, when you ask a question, or when one asks a question of, are Asians creative? What are we doing in the creative space? I think people forget that we are responsible for most of the most creative enterprises of all time. I think about YouTube, Snap, Pinterest, Twitch, Hulu, Canva. Most of them, by the way, are LPs, so my overlords as well. But all of these have an Asian co-founder or founder or CEO, every single one. And these have vastly accelerated our creative economies. You look at traditional media, the most viewed series of all time on the most time spent per watch platform, Netflix, is Squid Game, entirely in Korean. You look at the most lucrative creative franchise in history. It's actually not the MCU. That's the most successful cinematic franchise. The most successful franchise of all time is actually Pokemon, which is Japanese, by the way.
I'm going to just quickly break in. You're so well-spoken. You know, these questions are coming in. That was my subtle way to say that.
I'm trying to tell you that Asians are creative.
These questions are coming in fast and furious, particularly to people, not that you didn't, but that had created like the companies. Shiza and others, there was an interesting one. You've all been so successful in building this business, some building off of cultural traditions, but the question is an intriguing one. What are your values, of course, do you cherish and will pass on to your children, but what are the ones that you need to let go of to build a business here? I mean, so we all take pride in this Asian Americanness, but is there some things that we got to change? Who would like to go first?
I have one thought on this. I recently listened to a podcast that it's by Arthur Brooks was on it. He's an author and commentator about happiness. And one of the things that he talked about was about how we can't fully helicopter or coddle our kids, because suffering and pain is the only thing that sort of allows you to also experience happiness. And having that juxtaposition is really important. And so one of the things that I'm really thinking, I mean, my poor thing, my daughter's only like 9 months old. So right now I'm more of a helicopter mom. But you know, one of the things that I'm really thinking about is like, how do you let go a little bit and let your children experience some mistakes, so that way they can learn from them. And I think my parents as immigrants, wanted to protect us so much because everything was new to them when they came here, and they wanted to, make sure that we didn't experience any pain. And over time, I think that was a lesson that we learned as we moved out on our own and went to college and this kind of thing. But I haven't figured it out, so if anybody has any answers for this, but
whether it's you yourself or like the next generation, what are the things that we need to let go of?
So my experience is a bit different. I grew up in Pakistan. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated alone to go to college at Stanford. I come from a very modest family. My grandparents were farmers on both sides, and my mother didn't get to choose who she married, didn't get to pursue higher education, didn't get to build a career. And my father and her worked really hard to give my siblings and I a better life, which of course meant the best education they could possibly afford. But the story that my mother would tell me was, don't work too hard, right? I want a life that is easier for you than what I have had. And as women of her time and place weren't allowed to work, there was sort of this narrative of the poor men, they work all day, aren't we lucky that you won't have to work so hard in that same way? And the way that I dealt with that as someone who was wildly ambitious, and by the way, now my mother runs an orphanage all day and is one of the most fulfilled, career-driven women I know. But the way that I dealt with that was I started working only in the nonprofit space. And I was growing up in Islamabad. There wasn't much industry. It was just government and nonprofit, largely funded by USAID at the time. And so my entire childhood through my early 20s, I worked in nonprofit. I worked in women's rights. I worked organizing for civil liberties. I started the Malala Fund to help girls in the poorest communities around the world access an education. And I hadn't contemplated that I could ever start a business until I moved to Stanford, was surrounded by startups, and realized the power of business and the power of work and the power and the meaning that can give your life, whether that is a nonprofit or a business. Founded the Malala Fund, one of the most influential nonprofits today in girls' education. But our place, the business that I founded, grew at 10x that pace, right? The power that I was unable to unleash by building a brand, by having consumers, by having community, I have had a much larger impact, I believe, through my business than through my nonprofit work. And I think, there's literature now a lot, work isn't everything, work friends are not your real friends, don't find meaning at work, right? The sort of movement away from the power of work, and that scares me, is the sense of work can be so incredibly meaningful and powerful. And for my kids, I will insist that they find meaning in work, and I will tell them that will be the place where they will have some of their greatest joy, fulfillment, and impact, because I know how hard women in so many countries around the world are fighting for the right to work.
There was a question that came in for Payal, but I'm going to have you answer first if others want to jump in. It asked, how do we help our brothers and sisters also? But is it just us helping each other? Because there was another a question I'm going to combine, which maybe was from some of my Filipino American friends. It says, into the Philippines, we have something called the crab culture, where sometimes, for those who eat crab, and the real crab, not that you only get the meat, but the crabs are like crawling out of the bushel, and then the other crabs bring that crab back down. There's almost like a competitiveness within our community. Have you ever had to face that? Or again, I think the basic question is, what is the advice where sometimes you think, oh, you should be my ally because no, I'm your competitor.
Yeah.
What is your experience in building your business?
I'm going to answer that, but I do want to just go on the other question really quickly because I think it's important. I have a little girl and a little boy, and I've thought about this a lot. And I think the biggest thing, and this was very much an issue even in my own life, is I think we need to stop pressuring girls to get married at a young age. Like, I don't know how much that happens still, but at the end of the day, I know I faced it. I remember being in Forbes and my dad being like, are you going on a date? Like, when are you getting married? And those type of of notions that we have, and on the other side of it, to raise my boy to respect women paramount, and know that the gender roles are not what we may have always seen them to be. I just wanted to say that because I just think it's so important to say that. On the competitive thing, I grew up in a way where my community was all around me. We all celebrated each other. Because my parents immigrated here, their family ultimately was these aunts and uncles that I had, right? We didn't have my real aunts and uncles from India here. So I grew up with this real deep sense of community, and everyone's win, one person's win was everyone's win. And I think I always felt that if I created something for other people, we all were always winning. ClassPass was never was about me or about my family. And I think that is a mentality we have, is to protect our unit, right? We come from, whether it's India or other places, it's a sense of, how do I protect my family? How do I make sure I win, or that my family is secure? And I think if you think back to what impacting others can do, those lines really start to erase, and you realize that everyone winning, as you were saying too, is more important than the sum of all the parts is so much more important.
Also, to be really rude, I think, as we think about this in threes, I think whenever there's someone who is very zero-sum mentality and they come to us, it usually comes from a place of hurt and pain. Because the people who have to operate that way are trying to protect the little that they have. It could be a quality issue. It could be because they're hurt in other ways issue. There are lots of valid reasons, sometimes not valid. But I think knowing that and coming from that perspective is really, really, really important.
Well, going back to the first point about, are there values and things that we also need to kind of morph away from. I was struck, we, Milken Institute, do a similar conference like this in Singapore. A little bit of a different demographic, but Americans flying out. And to your point about a key way forward is, don't keep encouraging your daughters, you got to get married soon. It's great you're a billionaire, but shouldn't you be married? And so we programmed, I don't know who helped me, but we had Henry Golding is an actor from Crazy Rich Asians. We had all these actors come in, but the most popular person that came in was Auntie Seema, who was on a show called Indian Matchmaker. Some guys giving a thumbs up. And it was so funny because there's so much ethnic Indians who are CEOs in Singapore. They're like, no, that's the one I want to hear, because I want to know, how do I get my son or daughter married off? So I think those of us who are leaders have to live the talk,
Absolutely.
But wasn't her advice all of you need to calm down?
No, it's so funny. I mean, it's funny. You should watch it online. She said one of the challenges today is that young people, they think you need to be 100% compatible. She was, I can't remember the percent, it was 50% good enough. You work it out. Right?
It's very Brene Brown.
But in a way, she's built her own business. She's not Indian American, but doing what you love and building your brand and building your business. Last one, this is the Milken Institute. We're also about philanthropy and giving back. So yes, help our brothers and sisters, help them. But one question was, how do we encourage Asian Americans, I think they imply successful ones, to do more for philanthropy and charity? Right, and it's so funny. Even in Asia, we talk to all these billion, help do something. No, I'm giving it to my kids. Why do I give it to a foundation or a charity? Is it a mindset shift because we're newer Americans, new immigrants? Any thoughts on that for anyone? Dave, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I talk to a lot of people who've done very well, very successful executives and investors, and I think comes from the scarcity mindset. It's it's not. You keep as much as you can because you might lose it. So you don't always think about giving back. And when I'm trying to raise money for a film or a project or for anything, I think it's challenging, because they'd rather go buy real estate with that money, or it's what is the safest thing I can get a return on? And they're worried they might lose it. And I think that's a mentality we have to change, because I think the whole growth mindset of how do we build this pie bigger for everyone, that it is possible. We work together, get more people on boards together, create more community, more projects together. You can grow the pie bigger. That donation, sitting in the room where it happens, whether it be on a board of trustees where it's mostly white men and none of us are in that room, you're missing out on actually being in an important place that you can make influence. And I think being in nonprofits, you're oh, what's the benefit of being on part of the board of the opera or this or that? That room is where you meet a lot of people who have a lot of influence, and that's how you get on the corporate boards, or that's how you get involved and become an LP in this or that. But these conversations, if you're not in that room, And if you don't force your way in those rooms, then you're not going to be in the conversation. So I think, it's very important for us to be involved in that. And I think that kind of coalition building across communities that Bing is talking about, we've always felt like foreigners in this country, even though I was born in Queens, I'm as American as anyone else. But I think if you don't build those coalitions and look out for other people who feel that way to support women, Hyphen is invested 50% in women companies because only 2% of venture capital goes to women, and it's all because men run everything. So I think we're always very cognizant of others and how they feel because we're used to feeling like an outsider. When you walk in a room in high school or whatnot, you're like, oh, am I going to be invited to this thing what Payal was talking about? And so you're always very sensitive to what other people are going through, whether they're black, whether they're LGBTQ. I think it's on us to actually help these communities because we were there. And so if we are in those rooms now that we're seeing, I think in 1965 the Immigration Act was lifted and a lot of our parents were allowed to come here. So now the children of those immigrants are getting into positions of power and they're running a lot of stuff in this country. It's like if we can get those people to open up seats for others, because we remember as kids what it felt like to be not invited to the birthday party, that's when we can actually open up doors for a lot more people and help people lift people up.
And I'm thinking, we have like 4 minutes left. There's like 16 questions. So I'm going to email all of you later, and you got to answer, and we'll post it online. All of these people also, particularly Dave, probably being Payal, you're so active on social media, so do follow their thoughts. And how I first met Dave, he just wrote some fascinating stuff on LinkedIn, and so during the pandemic, we did like a random Zoom call to meet people, and it's about that networking. Milken is all about connecting and convening. We have a whole Waldorf ballroom full of certainly Asian Americans, but a mix of people. All of you connect and convene. I just want to, let's go to, I think it's slide number 1. And let's just, celebrate Asian American Heritage Month, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month by each of you, because we only got 30 seconds each. I'd love you if you could give a shout out to an Asian American business or an entrepreneur, and you can't be your own. Don't talk to me about Gold House being. It's got, and maybe it can't even be one you invested in. But is there something that you want to share with this crowd? Wow. Pay attention to this entrepreneur or this startup company because you might not know it, but they're founded by an Asian, or you might even not know they're Asian American. Who might it be? Who's going to start?
Easy.
It's going to be Bing.
It's only me because no one else wants to go.
Okay, anyway, okay.
There's so many people. I'll give a shout out to a role model. Why
Okay,
not that?
absolutely.
But Anjula Acharya, who is
Tell us, for people who don't know.
So she was my first investor and ultimately the only other South Asian woman I know who is not a lawyer, doctor, and in the media world and doing something on her own merit. And so when I met her when I was 25, I was like, oh my God, we can take this path. So I'm so happy and grateful for her
And that's
showing
cool
the path.
too. We need to give a shout out to the people that helped us. And to be quite frank, sometimes, like for me, they weren't Asians, right? It was just someone that thought, wow, he can be successful. Let me support that person.
Exactly.
Dave, company, individual, Asian American for this month, who do we want to celebrate?
Bao Nguyen, because I'm looking at him right now. I know he's like, I'm just not. So Bao directed Be Water, the Bruce Lee documentary on ESPN and Hulu now, and then he directed the We Are the World documentary on Netflix. And as a kid, that was one of my favorite songs. I had the single back in the day, listened to it over and over again. But Bao's doing amazing things, and he's Vietnamese American who's like now on the map, and a lot of people want him to do their documentaries. And it's so encouraging to see someone like him telling the stories of America, and he just looks not like a lot of other people that you've seen who are doing it. So I'm super proud to know him, and I'm just rooting him on.
And also for what's great about Bao, it's so funny because I helped open randomly the Ho Chi Minh City International Film Festival. And like, Bao, what are you doing here? He goes, what are you doing here? You've got nothing to do with this world.
He's a lot of
you should be there. You shouldn't be here. But for me, it's just a great example of also the variety, the diversity of our community, but of the projects that we're working on. Smita.
I'll say, well, one stat that I like to say is that actually less than 1% of businesses in the US take venture money. The majority of businesses here in the United States are small businesses. So I'm not going to name just one, but support small businesses that are local is one thing that I'll say. Asian-owned small businesses that have been in your neighborhood for years, that may not be like the cool, hip one in town, but serve or have really great products and look really local. That would be my one.
No, that's cheating. You should give one, I'll say, your local boba tea place. Go buy something. Shiza.
I'm going to shout out Lisa, who's, I think just so consistently, not just an amazing storyteller for the community, but a friend and advocate, and who I've gotten to know recently. And
what's her name again? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Lisa.
Lisa Ling.
Lisa.
Lisa.
I know Lisa.
Who's
How
right
embarrassing.
there. And I think just
I thought
really.
you meant La Lisa, Blackpink. In Asia, it's about
Awesome.
absolutely
I
Lisa
just
Ling.
think
What a
she's
role model.
just such an advocate for everyone.
So, again, thank you all for coming. This is a month where I hope you pay particular attention to Asian Pacific Americans. But I think throughout the year, we're probably involved in your life and you don't know it, with the products you buy, the services that you use. But let's indeed all help each other. And let's give a big round of applause to everyone here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.